When you make a video about an incident whose tendrils of effect can't be counted on one hand, you're bound to miss something. In my watch-through for my second part to Rick's death and Degrassi analysis, I was more concerned with the students, and less so than the teachers or other adults. While I'm disappointed that my video ended up solely discussing the younger cast, it's not like there wasn't reason for it. The fact is that the show focused on the students, and any mention of how it affected others came in passing. And for some, like Rick's family, we can only infer what they faced after the shooting. As someone who had a morbid curiosity for serial killers and school shootings in my high school days that led me to do a lot of reading into them, I can say for certain that Rick's parents suffered dearly. Not only did they lose their son, but now everyone blames them for what he did. There would be no sympathy for their grief. Instead, they would be met with questions they can't answer and accusations. People will claim that they should have and could have done more, act as though his parents had absolute influence into the person he would become. I wouldn't be surprised if they had to leave Toronto or the province just to escape all this and start to address their own wounds from what happened. But it's uncertain if they would have found the quiet they needed. All of this is speculation based off of outside knowledge, and that's why I didn't bring up Rick's parents initially. The show doesn't give us much other than that his mother was distraught but wasn't alone at her son's service. I would have loved if the show dug into what parents of school shooters endure in the aftermath, but then again, that's not Degrassi's focus. It's the kids, the students. So it makes sense to only hint to how the adults feel, as that's all the students will get when looking through their perspective. Besides, teens are the target audience. Raditch is the one I'm kicking myself for not at least mentioning. I did bring up how wary he was to greenlight possibly insensitive school-sanctioned events like Dracula as a school play, but there is a little more to talk about, just not very much. Again, the focus was not on the adults or the school staff. We don't get to see him personally deal with the shooting. For the most part, when he's on camera, Raditch is putting on a public face, the face of a school that must go on. It's uncertain if he ever felt personal guilt for the part he played in the build-up to the shooting. What we know is that initially, he felt it was all out of his hands. When he has to oversee a school of 700 students and its teaching staff, how could he have prevented one kid from bringing a gun? Given time, he most certainly reflected on the sentiment of his and what happened, but if it changed how he feels about them is unknown. What is clear is that he wasn't happy with being reassigned and ousted as principal at Degrassi. It came suddenly, and Raditch probably felt that at the time he was doing all that he could to bring the school back to normal, but the school board clearly felt differently. It must have been a personal blow. He had been working at the school for much of his career and probably assumed that he'd be doing so until retirement. It's still rather sad, no matter how you or I personally feel about Raditch's role leading up to the shooting. I'd be curious to know what he's up to these days, if the reassignment ended up being a positive for him. Mr. Simpson clearly blamed Raditch and the staff at Degrassi. He probably also blamed himself to a degree. When he describes how the shooting happened, he said none of us took Rick's bullying seriously enough. Not they, us, implying that he, to some extent, held himself responsible. It's likely that the shooting ended his friendship with Mr. Raditch, and certain that it affected how he would see the school and its students when he became principal. I wouldn't say it changed anything in how he wanted to handle student issues, as he was always the type to put kids first and be empathetic. If anything, it reinforced how he acted in his role as a teacher and principal. I'm definitely making a video about his time as a teacher and how his outlook as an educator changed over the years, because it's one of my favorite parts of the adult-related aspects of the show. So I'll give more detail then about why early TNG Simpson is very different from the one that we know today. Miss Hatzilakos I can say less about, but there's still something. She was obviously deeply disgusted to find that Spinner helped lead to the shooting, and was especially upset that he didn't seem to understand the severity of what he did. You can see it in the appalled look and tone she uses in the scene where she expels Spinner. Someone in the comments mentioned a zero-tolerance policy on bullying coming into effect because of the shooting, but I wonder if it was actually always there. We don't know what zero tolerance meant for Degrassi, and some instances of bullying might look more innocent from the outside. I mean, Simpson simply assigned Jimmy to the quiz team when he walked in on him and Rick in the hallway. Miss H could have just been referencing a policy that has always been there. But maybe it was a new thing. It's almost certain that stricter rules would be implemented after such a major catastrophe. Maybe zero tolerance was one of them? Certainly didn't prevent future cases of bullying, but that's a topic for another place and time. From the looks of it, I think Miss Hatzilakos was somewhat happy to be made principal, even if it was initially meant to be temporary. She seemed to glow with enthusiasm to incite changes she thought the school needed. It also felt like a very natural progression for her character, and I thought she slid into the role like that one sock that conforms to your foot perfectly. She really felt like a school principal. Everyone else, well, we don't know. Obviously, the adults were shook by what happened, especially the ones who attended the school in their youth. That's really it. And that's why it didn't stick out in my mind to cover the adults in my previous video. There's not really anything to say, even about Rick's mom. She's seen briefly, but her character isn't built upon past the expected grief. Pretty similar with Miss H. Actually, half the reason I brought her up was to discuss the zero tolerance policy. But Raditch and Simpson deserved at least a mention. Mea culpa, mea culpa. Well, I think that finally concludes our look at Rick Murray's death. Unless I forgot someone else. Oh, please tell me I didn't pass over another character. I just want to move on. Thank you very much for consuming this video. If you'd like to talk to me about just about anything, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. You can find me at NotAVampyre. Thank you very much again, and until next time.